what is that creative process like, both as an actor and as a director, when you're setting up the audio feeds for games these days?
It's almost as if you have a script that is...
Nate, we just got done talking to Keythe Farley. I want to know, and we didn't get a chance, where he hid that video game from himself that he almost got addicted to, but he hid it from himself. It seems like a good place to put other stuff. But I really enjoyed him walking through some of the how audio is made for video games on this episode. And it has me thinking differently about process. How about you?
Well, I think he hid that game wherever the chess app is that's hiding from my phone right now, because can't touch that every now and then. This was a great conversation with Keythe. I think really being able to kind of immerse ourselves for an hour in the voiceover world, really fascinating to hear the kind of the parallel tracks that happen with game development and voiceover work, and just sort of how different that is each time it seems like he experiences creating, voices for a game. And so I really hope that you'll enjoy this interview as much as we did. On to the pod. I'm Nate Kadlec, and I'm here with my co-host Joseph Reuter. And today we are excited to speak with Keythe Farley, a performer, writer, casting and voice director, and all-around entertainment and performance veteran. As a key figure in the industry with more than 25 years of experience in voiceover, casting, and direction, as well as 35 years as a professional actor on stage, screen, TV, commercials, and even singing telegrams, he is among the top names of his trade. Keythe is most famous for his voice acting roles with characters such as Thane Krios from the Mass Effect series, Conrad Kellogg from Fallout 4, Ardo Baradai from Star Wars Squadrons, and Santa from Alien Christmas. Keythe, we're thrilled you're here.
It's good to be here. I feel like I should just to get us started.
That's great. Yeah.
Wait, did we just meet Santa?
You just did. Growing out the beard for later this year. Yes.
I love it. So Keythe, what's your favorite game to play these days?
These days, I don't get much time to play games, sadly. I grew up with video games, though. I mean, I started as a pinball player. In my youth, and I was probably there the day they wheeled the Pac-Man console into the arcade. And I've played Atari, ColecoVision, Intellivision, Sega, PlayStation. I started with the 1, went to the 2 and the 3 and the 4. And once kids came along, every time I would sit down, I'll tell you a story about playing Red Dead Redemption. Picked it up at GameStop, and one night when the kids and the wife were all in bed, I snuck it into the PS3 and fired it up and played for 3 or 4 hours, and then took it out and hid it so that I would never touch it again, because I knew that parenting and playing this game that I was utterly obsessed with were not going to be conducive. But I really enjoy a wide variety of games. The first time I played Tomb Raider, I lost my mind because, again, I'd grown up with Sonic and, sort of platformers, side action scrollers. And the first time when she runs into that canyon and the wolves are coming at her and the symphony orchestra kicks in, I was like, holy crap, I'm in a movie. And that experience of controlling the film, controlling the narrative, even though you were on rails, was just so great. And then other games like Driver. I also love Driver. I love, the car games. Played a lot of those pre-kids. So yeah, kind of the adventure story is really important to me. Although I really enjoyed games like Flower and Journey, which are just these beautiful sort of pastoral settings that you can sort of float through and just make flowers grow or turn on the lights and just kind of relax into it. With my kids, we played a lot of Guitar Hero and Rock Band when those were popular. Coming up, we played Rayman Origins, was a fun one to play with the kids. Just a kooky, cartoony side action scroller that was just a blast. And then the games that I've touched recently, and I don't get the time I would like to. The latest Tomb Raider was amazing. I remember my son came walking through and I was playing it on the projector in the living room. He's like, holy crap, that looks good. That's like same thing that I said the first time. It's like playing a movie.
Just wild.
Absolutely wild. From little maze games, Pac-Man, and now pinball seems to be making a resurgence, which I love. It's fun to be back in control of a physical interaction with a table and a ball. And then they've added all the video game elements of being able to save your progress. So you can, with your phone, you can log in the next time you jump on a game and toss $1 in, you're picking up where you left off. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. Kind of a melding of the two, like video games and pinball have kind of come back together. So long answer to say nothing really right now.
That's fascinating about pinball. I had no idea. I haven't played pinball in a while, but that's a great nice little.
This arcade driven, right? Like bars. You see this in Portland, right?
Yeah. The thing now that's kind of making a comeback is the barcade, where you go into a bar and sometimes there's a cover. And my local one here in North Hollywood is a 1-drink cover. And then you grab quarters and you go into the back room and they've got classic arcade games, pinball, Terminator 2, pinball machine, which I played a lot of in the 90s, big Pac-Man on screens, and then the new ones that Stern is putting out that are often branded. Godzilla is a great one. Jaws is another one that they put out. So it's kind of branded with Avengers, I think, is another one where you can play as Marvel characters. Pretty cool. I'm
really curious about, you started your career as an actor. Do you remember your first role?
Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I was.
Is this something that you always wanted to pursue, getting into acting? And
it's funny. I was talking about this the other day with a student of mine. When I was a kid, Robert Redford and Paul Newman did Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which is a great movie that I loved. And then they were tapped again to do a movie called The Sting. And I think they were both paid like $1 million each to do the movie. And I thought, you could dress up and play gangsters and get $1 million? I want to do that. And it was only after I was completely and utterly hooked that I realized that making a living might be a little more of a challenge than just, walking into the studio and going, can I have $1 million to, be cool in a movie? But the love of it, and it sort of paralleled to my obsession with audio. I fell in love with the radio when I was a kid, and I still love the radio and podcasts and the audio medium in general. And so I kind of pursued radio alongside acting and ended up at the top 40 station in Sacramento my senior year in high school, working the princely shift of 2 to 8 a.m. on Sunday mornings. So it was the graveyard of all graveyards, but I was there. And I always used to say I got to DJ people home from the bars and then also got to DJ them on their way to church on Sunday mornings. So, and then in college, I was a drive time DJ at a little station in Davis, California. And I kind of realized that I needed to make a choice, whether I was going to go the radio route or the sort of acting route. And I chose acting at that point. And it wasn't until many years later when I was working at Klackey Chupo, the animated studio that did Rugrats and Duckman, Edith Ann with Lily Tomlin, that I would get these cassettes back in the 90s, this cassette of the assembled script that the animators would then use to animate the show. And it would be labeled Duckman 307 radio show. And that's when I made this connection, like, oh, all those radio dramas that I loved growing up, this is where it went. That there's still an opportunity for actors who use their voices to still be able to tell stories. So it was kind of the coming back together of my radio experience and my storytelling experience.
Super interesting to hear. Like, it's a big mix. It's audio, but you found your way into games, which are stories that you get to participate in and then be like a willful actor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like the participants are the actors in this case.
Yeah. And more, you're controlling the narrative. When I played Thane in Mass Effect, that was the first time I saw branching dialogue used to affect the outcome of the game. When I directed Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2, we had some branching dialogue, but it was basically in the hub where you could walk up to any of the characters and start a conversation and have a choice about whether you were going to be friendly, mean, or snarky. And then the character would respond, and the scene, it would end, and you could go to somebody else and be friendly or mean or snarky. But wow, with Mass Effect 2, I really realized like the way that they were integrating choice into, and then again, like I said, with Red Dead Redemption, it's all about the choices that you make and whether you're welcomed or feared by folks in the world. It's an amazing evolution from that sort of video games are linear and you're on a rail and the story plays the same way every time to you have choices. And the game will play differently if you make different choices. And that's, I think, the replayability factor, the bang for your buck for video games today is off the charts because the replay will be different than your first playthrough.
Yeah. How do you effectively or most energetically engage that challenge on the creation side? Because you've got voice actors that need to act in like, I don't know, schizophrenically. Okay, now do this, right? What is that creative process like, both as an actor and as a director, when you're setting up the audio feeds for games these days?
It's such a great question, because it's almost as if you have a script that is changeable. You know what I mean? Like, I'm used to, as a stage actor, the play is the play. It doesn't change. I mean, it changes a little bit from night to night based on, responding to people, but there are guidelines there that the river flows in the same direction every night. With branching dialogue, it's like playing a scene that might have 3 different outcomes, which then will affect how you feel about the character the next time you run into them, right? It is almost like schizophrenia in that you're sort of going along in a scene and we sort of would play the scene out one way and then go, okay, now at this point it branches and it goes down here. So there's a different choice here. And now the scene plays out differently, but it also branches out down here 3 different ways. And so you sort of go back, and it's really important to sort of remind the actor, because we're always dealing with, where am I? Who am I talking to? What do I want? And how does that make me feel? Right? Those are the building blocks of a performance. So those things don't change except for how do I feel? Right? So what do I want stays the same, but maybe I'm not getting it on this branch. So that's going to change the emotional state as we're playing through this branch. Right? And then maybe this branch brings you back closer to what it is you want. So it's just a matter of, as a director, it's about being in communication and in cooperation with the actor to keep them apprised of where we are in the scene. And as an actor, it's so much fun to be able to play all these different outcomes in the scene, whether it's, falling in love with somebody or learning to hate somebody or becoming antagonistic to somebody, and maybe not making it through the next battle, not surviving to go on. So in video game parlance, it's next level. It's a real next level approach to storytelling, which requires a next level of flexibility in the performer. Because once I learn Death of a Salesman, say, I know what I'm doing. I know how to play Willy Loman from the top of the show to the bottom of the show, because it's the same top to bottom every night. And the challenge there is to keep that fresh for the audience, not to become bored or churlish or silly because I've done it 100 times, but to be respectful to the audience that is seeing it for the first time. So that's the challenge in that repeating of a stage performance. Whereas the challenge in video games is being quick on the uptake to new information, being able to play whatever's in front of you and get there immediately. Because a lot of times we don't get the scripts ahead of time. We don't see what we're doing. We're leaning on the directors and the writers to take us through. But as the actor, you have to remain open to not knowing, which is a great tool for actors to have, and something that's not inherent to every actor out there. Actors often need to know what they're doing in order to be able to play. But in a situation with branching dialogue and you've never seen the script before, you've got to be, improv is paramount. Being able to just accept and then respond in the moment to moment, and then go back and play a different moment, and then that branch, and then go back.
Okay, now be funny.
Yeah, now be funny.
Yeah, okay, now be angry.
Dance, monkey, dance. Yeah.
Dance. Do you approach it scene to scene, or do you follow, in terms of the structure of the recording, do you follow an emotional state through, or a scene to scene state, or?
I mean, we're getting into like the fine details of acting. It's important to know what your character wants on a global level. You know what I mean? Are they about justice? Are they about chaos? Are they about peace? Are they about friendship? And then that informs what's at stake in each scene, right?
Okay.
So that understanding is really important. And I'll tell you a story about, I won't mention the game, but there was a game that I worked on where we did a level where the player character wakes up on a subway and then has to go interrogate somebody. And then that interrogation gets foiled. And then you have to chase the people that foiled it to the place, the exfil spot, to get out of there and get out of there alive. So I'm like, great. A couple weeks later, I get a script for a level called Prologue. And I go, oh, okay, so this comes before the waking up on the subway scene. And they're like, what are you talking about? I said, well, the waking up on the subway scene, the beginning of the game. They're like, it's not the beginning of the game. That's like the 7th level in the game. Okay. You guys need to tell me the story of your game. I thought that was the first thing that we did, and it would just happen to be like a demo level that they played at E3 or one of the conventions. That was the demo level. And it felt to me like it was the beginning of the game because it was the first thing I saw. But these things happen out of order oftentimes. So I just told them, like, send me a treatment, bring me into your office, take me to lunch, and just tell me the story so that I can be up to speed and be more effective as a director. Now on Final Fantasy 15, which I'm proud to say, we went from the beginning to the end in chronological order. So the actors were able to play the scenes in order. And then we went back and did gameplay stuff, and we went back and did AI stuff, that banter in the car as you're driving from one location to another. So I'd have to remind the actors, where we are and where this little gameplay might show up, whether it's, in Hammersmith or Accordia. And so that knowledge of where are you in the timeline is going to affect what the character wants. But if we know what the character wants globally, then each scene becomes much easier to play.
Yeah. Do you have access to the audio tracks when you're doing this? I've always been fascinated with not only the graphics, like thank you NVIDIA for continuing to press visual graphics, but from an audio standpoint, I'm always like really stunned when I can cognitively recognize how significantly I'm being manipulated by the audio. like, wait a second. And so like you have the voice track there. How does the audio connect in your mind to the actors making those tracks? Do they hear it, or is it laid in after the fact? Or like talk a little bit about those hidden keys you have to the human emotion.
Well, that's what actors do. I mean, that's our job, is to unlock those doors to emotion, and to be technicians as well, to be clear in the way that we speak. It's both. You have to have a technical facility and an emotional availability in order to be a really effective actor. And to be an effective voice actor, you lose facial expressions and gestures. And so it's all focused through the spoken word. And that's a specialized skill set that not everybody has, not every actor has. I mean, actors can be so reliant. My wife is a costume designer. I've seen her hand an actor a character by putting them in a costume. An actor who was struggling to perform their role, once they get in this costume that she's constructed for them, all of a sudden understands everything about the character. We don't have that luxury as voice actors. It'd be fun to go to work in costume, I suppose, but not necessary. If you have a great...
Why are you wearing a squirrel outfit? Right. I'm a squirrel today.
Yeah. Method, man, the method. So sometimes in Final Fantasy 15, once again, to use that as a great example, it was recorded in Japanese and by brilliant actors. But we decided early on that we wanted the English language actors to be free to play the roles the way they wanted to, the way that if it were created in English, what would it sound like? So we were constrained by timing and length because those files are already there. So we had to make sure that the files conformed to the length of the performance. And we would use the performances as a reference if we had a question, like how far away is this character when I'm talking to them? Are we shouting here, or is this still conversation in the back of a car? And a lot of times the Japanese would help us to get there. So each track had the lines for a specific actor. So if it's Noct, Ignis, Gladio, and Prompto, right? 4 tracks. And the lines were spaced out, the files, spaced out in such a way that it was playing like a scene, right? So if I had recorded Ray Chase as Noct, I could play in Robbie Damon as Prompto with his lines. And you would just pick up and play off of Ray. If we didn't, if you were the first one to record a scene, it's up to me. And I got pretty good at approximating those guys so that it was like, I have my Prompto and my Gladio and my Noctis and my Ignis, my approximations of what the other actors were doing to try to help them and read them in. So that was a luxury that we don't often get on. I think it was the Mass Effect 3, which I was in briefly, but for wonderful deathbed scenes. They had recorded Jennifer Hale, and they had a system where it played back Jennifer's lines for me, and then I was able to play off of her, which was great. It was amazing. It doesn't always happen. A lot of times we're just in a vacuum.
You're just standing in a foam room alone. But in Mass Effect, you had more than one role there. How often does that happen in a video game?
Most times. I mean,
most times
you'll do your main character, and then you'll do a couple of secondary characters, smaller characters that populate the world, maybe, 8, 10, 15 lines. And then there's in the contract with the union set with SAG-AFTRA, there's a thing called atmospheric voices, wherein you can play up to 15 roles in one session, as long as the characters have I think there's a number of lines designated, and the characters cannot advance the plot. So you can't be a character that you fight or who gives you a quest or gives you money. Just overheard voices like, this fish is delicious. I'd like to come back to this restaurant, which are all over the JRPGs in particular. You just overhear little snippets of conversation as you're walking through the city. Those are atmospheric voices. They don't advance the plot, and they're just there in the background of the world. And those are really fun because then you really get to play with your instrument and try to make sure that none of the characters are recognizable from each other. But the worlds are so vast I often joke, like, you might know me as Thane Krios in Mass Effect 2, or Conrad Kellogg in Fallout, or generic Male 5 in Guild Wars. It's one of those where you just swallow your pride and take the money.
That's a t-shirt.
Generic Male 5. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, right.
I'm not doing a whole lot of convention signings for that one.
And over here in breakout room 4, we have generic Male 5.
It's just a blank sheet of paper. But it was a way for them to populate the world without having me do a bunch of different voices. So I never kind of went off my standard voice print, but it was a character over here in this, and Guild Wars 2, of course, massive. That's why it's an MMO RPG, right? Massive multiplayer. And another character over here and another character over there, but they all had the same voice print, but you weren't likely to run into them talking to each other, right? So generic Male 5.
I'm really curious about the creative process. Like, when you're doing a lot of these recordings, is the game being developed at the same time? Like, is it finished? Are you coming in towards the end of game development? Like, what happens? I'm sure it never runs according to script, but I'm curious how that process plays out.
It's interesting because in film and TV, there's a very clearly defined production schedule, right? In animation, when I worked in animation, a very clearly defined production schedule. And the same events happen. You get 14 weeks, say, and the same events happen at every interval. And then each episode is staggered. And then there's a hiatus week to catch up with everything in case you're running behind. And then it kind of starts over. Not so in video games. Everybody has a different way that they do it. So, like I said, on the game, when I didn't realize I was doing level 7, I thought it was the first level. So they're developing, it's usually in parallel with what we're recording. So we had this with Asgard's Wrath 2, which I directed over the last few years. And it was really imperative because they were just plugging in little bits and pieces as we went along. They would expand a little scene that was already there or flesh out. And it was just sort of put together like a jigsaw puzzle, right? So what are we working on the jigsaw puzzle today? And I had to really lean on the brilliant team at Sanzuru, which were just, Grace was my backbone in that. Like, where are we? And she was sort of looking at the master scripts while I was looking at the scene that we were working on. So she could give the actor and I context about what was going on. So there's a million different ways that it gets done. Frequently, though, I've discovered that there's sort of parallel tracks. Like, the game is being developed and the performers are being recorded at the same time.
I'd love to chat a little bit about AI and how it's sort of impacting this industry. I know that there's a strike happening, and I'd be curious to kind of hear your thoughts on how technology as a whole is impacting your career and also just the entertainment industry as a whole. Like, what is happening right now from your perspective?
Well, AI has been in video games from the beginning. I mean, the way NPCs respond to you is programmed in, whether the people that you're around are aggressive or whether once they're hit, they run away. Once they're hit, their aggression doubles. Those are all sort of computational underpinnings of the characters that you run into. So that's games. I mean, going back to Pac-Man, the way each ghost comes after you is AI. It's programmed artificially into the game, and the ghosts respond to the way they've been programmed, which is swell. AI can be really effective coding. It can be really effective in lots of different ways. I don't think it's necessarily really effective from an artistic standpoint. It's fun to be able to create a Rembrandt portrait of yourself. That's fun, but it's not the same as having your portrait painted by someone who is trying to get at your soul, right? So with AI, the position that several organizations that I belong to, whether it's SAG-AFTRA or NAVA, the National Association of Voice Actors, have basically come to the position that if you want to use an AI replica of me or a character that I played, let's treat it the same way you would treat me. I know that I have a session that I go to and I'm going to record. It's going to go in a certain game and I'm going to get paid for it. And that's the box it lives in. What we're trying to avoid is taking a character that I created and then making it do something that I might disapprove of, or to use it in a sequel without compensation, to use it in another, side quest, in another game entirely, to have Thane walk in and say or do something without my consent is just not cool. So basically the idea is to treat the clone of me as if it were me. I want to be contacted. I want to get permission. I want to be compensated, and I want to know what it's going to be used for. I have a friend who's the voice of CVS. When you call CVS, you hear her take you through your prescription information, right? So she made a clone of her voice. CVS has licensed it, and they pay her. And that's the only thing that they're allowed to do with it. They can't take it over and sell it to Ralph's. They can't sell it to the supermarket. They can't sell it to anybody else. If she has some control, it's going to be a year or two at a certain price point, and then we renegotiate. So ideally, that's the way it should work. It's just funny. I had a conversation with a buddy of mine this morning about AI, and the game corporations would like us to think that particularly movement performers who do the sort of all the movements that the NPCs will conduct, especially when you're in the battle running around the world, whether a character zombie comes after you or runs away or attacks you with a crowbar, all those movements are performed by actors. And the video game corporations would like to have us believe that that is just data that they can then use anytime they want to, in any game they want to. The data of someone coming after you and swinging at you with a crowbar, which an actor performed on a performance capture volume. They're saying that's not a performance. No, that's just data that we can then use any way we want because we own the data, which is like saying a recorded performance is just grooves in a record, or it's dye on celluloid that runs through a projector, or it's data. The way films are projected now with digital, is it just data? And so that the movie distributors, the movie makers can just use that data any way they want? No, these are performances. And when you're reusing someone's performance, you pay them again for their performance. It's pretty simple, and they want to make it more complicated. And where I kind of came at the end of our text back and forth, I was like, there's so much reinvention of the wheel in tech. Like, what's wrong with the wheel? What's wrong with the way it works? It rolls perfectly fine, whether you put rubber on it or you make it cement or plastic or aluminum or titanium. It's still a wheel. And not always, but often in tech, they want us to think that we're, it's something that has never been done before when it's really just a wheel.
So you were using the word voice print earlier.
Right.
That's 2 words. When
hyphenated?
You go to a session, hyphenated?
Maybe hyphenated, yeah.
It could be.
And it makes it one word.
So we'll wait for the AI to set the transcript of this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Trust them implicitly. Yeah.
This is a sticky one. Like, it's super challenging, right? But you're thinking about a recording session and your voice is going to be 15 characters in a thing. Do they make modifications in the EQ or the balance or right? Because those boards are full of toggles and switches that synth and mess with the audio anyway, right? So there's that kind of dynamic of adjustment that's occurring already. Same person saying the stuff, but we mess with it after the fact. If that's automated or not is a different issue. I suppose that you have all kinds of opportunity in the generative side of scenes in a game that could be multiple characters multiple AIs talking to each other dynamically, so that every time you walk in, it's a different thing if we code it that way. Like, that's a future possible world if it's not already here. Set 3-5 actors up, have them read a bunch of stuff, walk into a room and have each of them be generating responses to each other. How do you handle that on the audio side? Because in some sense it's data. When you were talking about movement actors, I was thinking about all of the sensors that are placed around NFL stadiums and the different sources of information that come off of the jerseys, the helmets, the like how fast are you moving, at what coordinate are you in. The same thing happens in baseball. And in that case, it is data, except it's going to be really hard to generate a baseball game. And then I stopped and went, wait a second, maybe we could just AI our future sports. You know, it's AI Cardinals against AI Dodgers tonight on channel AI-ness. Generic male 5 hit a grand slam in the 5th inning. Like, how do you cut in your mind currently? How are you thinking about it currently? That there is a sense of just pure, it's data and it's being messed with already, right? That we've been okay with, right? Against, well, wait a second, maybe somebody does want to watch full sporting events that are just pure algorithmic results.
Right. But if you want to see the 2010 Giants play the 2017 Dodgers in an AI simulated World Series, 7-game series, right? You've still got to deal with Buster Posey. You've still got to deal with Shohei Ohtani. Did I say 2017? I did say 2017. Shohei Ohtani was not with the Dodgers. You got to deal with Clayton Kershaw. You know what I mean? You've got to deal with Corey Seager. You've got to deal with those human beings who performed those stats. And those are the people you're going to see in the game. You're going to see Buster Posey against Clayton Kershaw.
Yeah, it's an instance of commercialized movement already, right?
Those people are performers in that regard, right? That this is James Earl Jones will play Darth Vader for as long as they want him to, right? Because he's given permission to Lucas, Disney, to use his voice and plug it into Darth Vader any way they want. Fine. But I don't know what the deal is that James Earl Jones made. Was it a deal where he said, okay, then every time it's used, you pay my estate X number of dollars, which is what I would argue is the fair thing, is the right thing to do. He's still performing even after he's gone. My friend's father wrote tons and tons of television, passed away 10 years ago, and his son still collects his residual checks. Because if they're selling that script for Columbo and they're selling advertising on the Columbo network, his estate gets a piece of that. So if we're going to sell 2017 Dodgers versus the 2010 Giants in a World Series, then all those players are part of, and the teams, are going to have a revenue stream. And if you're selling commercial time on that, if I'm going to watch ads in between the innings, you better believe that I want a piece of that. If I'm the baseball player, that's going to be.
Unless you want to watch Blue versus Blue, then go for it.
Right.
Blue versus Blue. Well, I was thinking during pandemic times, the old, baseball games of past centuries, because you couldn't watch any sports and there wasn't any AI sports at the time. And you're like, well, I'll watch the World Series from 1992, right? You're like, what? Let's see if we can find somebody who's going to play it for us, right? And the contracts weren't in place at the time to send revenue back off the YouTube ad to the, so the tech has forced a bunch of these questions.
Yeah, that's a good question. What I think that the actors unions are trying to protect against is that. And there's always me, Keythe Farley, right? My voice. And if I'm licensing my voice to read the LA Times, that's something that's impossible for me to do. I can't sit in my booth and read the LA Times and have it online by the time the paper hits the doorstep, right?
You can't? Why not? Not yet.
Yeah, but with an AI version, easy peasy lemon squeezy. It happens like that. So pay me. You know what I mean? You want my performance. You want the sound of me, and the people like it. and you're selling ads, people are still looking at ads. Some of that revenue goes to me. It's my intellectual property, right? Now, if I'm playing Thane Krios is its own IP. My performance as Thane Krios is the part that I control. But the character itself, I can't do a one-man show as Thane Krios without permission from the folks that made the game. I don't know. I don't have rights to Thane Krios. By the same token, Thane Krios is impossible without me. So there's a symbiotic relationship there that I hope that we'll be able to negotiate and come to a resolution. And I think there are a lot of folks who are signing contracts right now that have AI protections in them so that they can keep working during this strike action. And the union is really open to, they've created budget, anything under $20 million down to like nothing. You can sign a contract that is really reasonable to hire union actors. And for the big budget games, there's a tiered agreement. I mean, there's a interim agreement where if you sign that, you keep working, no problem. It just provide those protections to the performers to make sure that you're not stealing our performance and monetizing it forever without any compensation coming back to us.
It's interesting. Is there any talk about like blockchain and audio? Does it get protected on chain in any way in some of these conversations?
There are a lot of folks who are trying to do that right now, who are working on that. And it's something we've been talking about for almost a decade. Like, how do we know? Like musicians know. They know when their song gets played. You better believe it. And musicians get paid every time their songs get played, particularly on the radio. I mean, and there's embedded markings that report that back in the ad revenue. Again, because they're selling these songs in order to advertisers. So if you like Taylor Swift, you're going to hear Taylor Swift, once every 90 minutes on Kiss FM. And maybe you're going to hear an ad that's based on what Taylor Swifties like, which is everything, I guess, because it's like a quarter of the planet is like into Taylor Swift. So
right.
It could be anything. So Taylor gets a little piece of that, and rightly so, because she's making Coca-Cola a lot of money.
Yeah. As a creative professional, I appreciate this. I hope you get paid what you're worth, especially, I think I'm on your side of all of this, but I'm curious, outside of AI impacting, the economy of your profession, I'm curious if you use it in any ways personally, like as a voice actor or director. I'm just kind of curious, like what kind of tools do you use in your creativity or personal life?
I don't. I mean, aside from telling my phone where I'm going and navigate me there, play something on Spotify or Apple Music.
Which also doesn't work half the time.
Doesn't work half the time.
Yeah.
Again, don't get me started on enshittification process. I do old-fashioned research. It's great to have YouTube to be able to look at other versions of the game. I tell my students, like, hey, if you don't have time to drop 40 hours to play XYZ game, you can always go onto YouTube and find a playthrough with no commentary. And you can just watch it and learn from it. So, sometimes you get auditions that reference different actors. So it's great to be able to go and listen to Morgan Freeman do a commercial as an inspiration, not to mimic him necessarily, although there are people who do that and do it very effectively. But what's his tone? What's his feeling? What's his vibe? And that sort of stuff just didn't exist 35 years ago. You had to just kind of remember, like, what is Clint Eastwood? What's Dirty Harry sound like? Or Harrison Ford in Raiders? Now I can go and just type in Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones clips and spend the better part of an afternoon learning from a master. So those sorts of research, I wouldn't trade it for the world. They're just almost as good as nonlinear editing. So, like, I cut tape, man. I'm old enough. I started out cutting tape, and every time I just splice something and move it around in my workstation, I just give thanks to the audio gods. So yeah, no, I don't really use AI. I mean, again, there are things that help with your workflow. I have a chain of compression and EQ that I use when I'm working that helps me sound good, which is nice to have those automated. But in terms of AI, I suppose I could ask it to generate sides for students. Give me sci-fi, space, opera, heroine sides, but I don't. I have plenty that I use. So
I love it. Keythe, this has been such a wonderful conversation, and really have a ton of respect for what you do, because I've noticed audio has been just a part of my life, in games, and it's so apparent when it's done well. And so I have a ton of appreciation for what you do. If people want to find you online, or reach out or have any questions, where might they find you?
I'm on Facebook, Instagram. My website is Keythe Farley. That's KeytheFarley.com. It's a great way to get in touch if you're looking for coaching, especially. There's a good spot there. A little bit about my bio, listen to my demos, sort of see what I'm doing. And then, like I said, Facebook, Instagram, mostly. Not really on the TikTok. And I kind of moved away from Twitter and was never super active on Twitter anyway, but moved even further away than I was before. But yeah, I look forward to hearing from folks.
Well, I echo the personal site. I think it's great. It's filled with just a ton of fun examples of what you do. And a lot of great images as well. So definitely go check out the website. Thanks so much for being here, Keythe.
With my pies.
Yes. Yeah.
For that alone, yep. Good to have a wife who's a costume designer. It's just perks.
Halloween must be fun.
Yeah.
Always.
Right.
Well, thank you guys for having me. This has really been terrific.
Cheers.